regional innovation systems. All the way from Finland, please make Dr. Markku Sotaruta welcome.
Thank you very much. Last year when I left this building, I thought that I would never come back because it felt like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But here I am, so who knows what happens in the future. And that will be one of my points in my presentation too. You know what this is? It's a country where I'm coming from, Finland. We have been celebrating innovation for 20 years or so now. Sometimes I say that we don't have innovation policy, we have an innovation religion. And Professor Peer said earlier that there must be resources and there must be leadership. I agree with him totally. The only problem is that in Finland we don't have much resources. We have a lot of forests and timber, but nothing much else. And that's why we have been relying on education and human brains as our resources. That's what we have, if we have them. So we take innovation seriously. I changed my title a little bit. I added one word, that is smart. And if you know anything what the European Commission is doing, my interpretation of smart is totally different from what the European Commission is saying. You'll find out soon what it is. So this talk will be about strategic leadership as a way to boost cooperation and collaboration in the realm of innovation systems. What we have learned that the world is such a competitive place that if you are not cooperating locally, regionally, and also nationally, the competition is really hard. We have to upscale ourselves. The way regional development innovation systems are quite often done is based on quite linear models of kind of strategic planning that is not always suitable for boosting innovation. We end up having kind of black holes in our strategic leadership and planning. And I will show you two very different innovation policy approaches, how to deal with this black hole, how to try to navigate through it. Unfortunately, they are not only about regions, they are rather like multi-actor, multi-level innovation policy that are involving perhaps regions, perhaps metropolitan areas, but most importantly people, and what public policymakers are doing in cooperation with other persons. Quite often when we are talking about leadership, we are talking about purpose, intention, goals, objectives, very rational things. But still, things just happen. We don't know what's going on. We just have to adapt. And at least for me, economic development and societal development as a whole quite often is about adaptation. We just have to adjust ourselves what's going on in the world. But it should be strategic adaptation. We should have our own idea of what we are doing, where we are going, and what we would like to achieve in the future. And I like the quote from Charles Darwin a lot. It is not the strongest of the species that survive. If it were, Finland would have died a long time ago as a country. Nor the most intelligent, but the one of the most responsive to change. And that I think we are doing up there somewhere. Because we are not the strong, we are not the most innovative, but we are quite responsive to change because we simply have to be. I don't go into detail in definitions, but I simply want to say that when I'm talking about innovation, I am talking about something new that is implemented, that brings value added. It can be technology, it can be ways of managing, cooperating, boosting regional development, governing the country, almost whatever. Innovation systems are networks of actors that are generating new knowledge or utilizing it, and quite often both and. And innovation policy by definition usually is about public sector actions to boost innovation. But as I will show you, at least in our case, it's not only public sector that is trying to influence what's going on in the firms or universities, but the innovation policy itself is shaped in cooperation between public sector firms and universities. And that's why also the innovation policy is constantly evolving way of finding right solutions and new innovations. But the challenge is that we need to be able to create new knowledge. Sometimes it's difficult, quite often it's difficult. It is something not all of us are actually doing, and that's why the question is also about attracting new knowledge, wherever it is. Is it abroad? Is it somewhere in your country? Is it local? Is it regional? But the question is, where are people who are doing things that are useful for us? How can we attract that knowledge in form of flesh? Like I'm here, I'm bringing some pieces of knowledge in form of flesh, but of course there are a lot of digital means also to acquire and attract knowledge. And we have to adapt that things, and we have to combine them what we already know, and we need to be able to unlock the knowledge there already is in localities, in regions, because there are much more than we are aware of. And all that requires very good network capacity, very good knowledge generation capacity, absorptive capacity, and capacity to act. And this is my point of departure. This is the way we are quite often taught to think about management, planning, policy making, since the 60s or so. We should have a vision, then we should have leaders who are communicating the vision to the rest of us. Then we should be able to say, where are we heading? What are the goals? But when we are talking about innovation systems or regions, these questions are extremely difficult to answer because there are a lot of us. There are a lot of visions, there are a lot of goals, there are a lot of ideas, there are a lot of possible strategies, and this very nice sequence of questions quite often creates some kind of false sense of security. We have a feeling that we have a nice strategy. We can show it to each other that we have a nice four-colored paper that says vision, strategy, etc. And then we think that everything is okay. But it is not. It's just a piece of paper. And then after 4 or 5 years, we realize that nothing has happened. So we wish to have this kind of nice futures, objectives, actions kind of steps. I don't know how sophisticated you are here in Australia, but usually in Finland we end up having very abstract and vague visions. Why? Because there are a lot of us from different walks of life, from different organizations. We can't agree on the most important measures. And what we do when we are facing difficult issues, we raise the level of the discussion, we make it more abstract, and again we make it more abstract. And in the end, all of us are able to say, yes, we want sustainable regions, I commit to that. We want to have more jobs, I'll commit to that. But when we start doing something, we realize that our interpretation of the vision is so different from each other. We don't really actually understand what we mean by all these nice sustainability, new jobs, etc. stuff. And here it is where we'll have the black hole of strategic planning. Visions, strategies, all nice, bold things here, and everyday life and our everyday actions somewhere here, and nothing in between. If this doesn't happen in Australia, you are much more sophisticated in your planning and management than we are in Europe. And this is what I call lack of leadership. Visions and strategies are very useful tools in getting people together, making sense collectively to talk about the most important issues, but the world simply is too fast for designing a vision, updating it, talking about it, because we have to move to action much faster. We have to become smart. I like the idea of living in a smart region, in a region that is quick, quick in thought and action, collectively. There is all the time something going on. It's bright, acute, clever. There is a lot of debates that are really witty. People are not pretending consensus, but they are challenging each other, challenging each other's ways of doing things. And that creates kind of smarting sensation that is not always nice, but that creates kind of creative tension that makes us really keen on and enthusiastic and interested in doing something for innovation region, etc. The whole planning apparatus for innovation it's not about creativity or innovation, it's something else. If we truly have smart regions, we may see quite surprising developments we can't even imagine about. This is something people usually don't think when they think forestry. This is a forestry machine. It doesn't look like it. I'll show you shortly what it does look like when it's finished. But forestry is, well, used to be and still is an important industry in Finland. And we also have a lot of forestry companies designing machinery for forest, etc., for forestry. This is designed by a company called Timberjack that was sold to American company John Deere, but still the R&D unit and manufacturing is in Finland. Why? Because the guys behind all these gadgets are doing things nobody else can do in the world. And they say they don't want to leave Finland. And the company want to have new kind of technology emerging. They have never sold a copy of this. They have been experimenting with it, designing it for, I don't know exactly, 15, 20 years. A long, long time. It is so expensive that nobody is willing to buy it. But what the technology director is saying, who cares? It is the playground for engineers. They can do whatever they want here. They can experiment, test, use their creativity, and if it works here, it will work in normal forestry machines also. The guy who is driving this or making it walk is having a joystick and a small laptop. He looks like playing PlayStation or tweeting in a conference. And the whole system is integrated to satellite systems. So what they do usually in forestry machines is that if there is an order from some factory, what kind of logs or whatever they need for their production, they simply push a button. It says there is a name of the factory and the guy pushes the button and the machine knows what is needed in a specific factory somewhere in the world. And when it finishes cutting all the trees, then it sends information via satellites to a logistic company that knows that in a specific place in the middle of nowhere there are logs you should go and pick up and take them somewhere else in the world. The whole thing is how to integrate very different forms of engineering, automation, hydraulics, information communication technology, to very traditional knowledge of forestry, etc. And also this walking forestry machine is very environmentally friendly because it recognizes the soil, and if it's too vulnerable, it doesn't put one leg down, but it's all the time sensing what the soil is like. This is how it looks in full form. It's cutting trees and that's it. But this is something that is emerging. And as I said, this is a playground for engineers, and there was once a colleague of mine making a study how technology